guys, it's the new sensation, Bigger Notation here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a deck profile for a deck that has been a favourite of mine for a long while, but has obviously recently got some new support in the anniversary box, and that being the Green Majin Buu leader. I believe it's from set 14 with all of the spirit boosty stuff. So obviously it got a new Z leader in the anniversary box, being Majin Buu the Insatiable. And it really changed everything for the deck. I used to play this deck as a green-blue variant, but then the bean nerf really affected the list. It kind of meant that the green-blue variant isn't really as viable as it used to be, in my opinion. I'm sure that there's ways that you can still play it green-blue, but in my mind it just doesn't really work the same without those aggressive beans. And so started to having to look into alternatives with just pure mono-green lists. And so whilst the nerf to bean did really detract from the overall power of the deck, the Z leader really added a lot of different functionalities to the deck and even added a massive power boost on top of that as well. It's really incredible to see what the deck can do now. I did originally start out with trying to play the deck as like a bit more of a value oriented deck, more of a control, with cards like the Vegito Unison that draws a card every time you union, and also the going more towards the 5-drop green Buu as well as the 6-drop black Buu, and kind of using more of the 4-drop promo Buu, the Tricky Nemesis, to bring them out from the deck. But I found that build just ended up being quite cloggy. None of the other like the rest of the archetype kind of felt like it wanted to do something different to what that part of the archetype wanted to do, and so I started to feel like it just wasn't really clicking with the control build, because I felt like a lot of the time on turn 2 playing the Vegito Unison just didn't feel good. You wanted to do other things with your energy, and then it felt like a lot of the rest of the deck, other than the 4-drop and the 6-drop and the 5-drop, was really geared towards being more of an aggressive deck. Like I felt like I was pushing a lot harder even though I was trying to play as a control deck. And obviously that's where a lot of the power from playing the green-blue build came from, was having all of these cheap 15Ks easily accessible, as well as a protected unison, so that you could always just bean up your energy for more 15K swings and more draws with the 1-drops. But it just felt like even without bean, the deck still felt like it wanted to be an aggressive deck, even when I was trying to lean into more of the control sort of aspects of it. And so I started testing out a couple of ideas, working with a couple of things, seeing where the deck was kind of feeling like it was going, and ended up with this really fun build of the deck, which is super aggressive, tries to kill people on turn 3 or turn 4, is very fun, lots of free play to it, like a surprising amount of free play. It's just very fun to pull off, and there should be some gameplay of me playing this deck up now as well, in one of the recent Scrub Games webcam locals, and you guys can see in that video I managed to kill everybody in that tournament that I played on turn 3 every single time. It just feels really amazing to pull off. It feels like honestly quite a strong contender, just really fun to play as well, like definitely a really good deck. And so I'll obviously get into the deck profile now, but it's really enjoyable to play. I'm a massive fan of the deck, and I think that this is one of the better builds for it right now. So to start off with the leader, I'll try and break down as much as I can, because I know that a lot of people might not be too familiar with the actual archetype. So the leader, fairly simple. So when he swings, you place a card from your life underneath the leader to draw 2, which is a bit of a weird alternative to the like standard draw a card or standard discard a card to draw 2, because whilst you're technically drawing 2 in terms of hand advantage, you're losing a life, and so obviously in terms of defending yourself that gets a bit trickier, and this is a part of the reason why I found the control build just wasn't working, because to get the draw power you're effectively critting your own life here. Or you can also think of it as taking your life and then drawing a card from your deck as the draw 2, but then you also get a card underneath your leader, which is super relevant for your union absorbs. So now on the front side of the leader, he also has an activate main for once per turn Spirit Boost 1, where you can choose a 4 cost or less battle card in the opponent's drop area, place it under the leader, and the leader gains one of those keyword skills from the battle card. So if the 4 drop or less battle card has double strike, your leader gains double strike for the turn. Now it's important to note that it doesn't keep the keyword skills for your opponent's turn, so if you take a keyword skill like blocker and you leave your leader in active mode, you're not going to be able to block the opponent's attacks. And something that's very important to note, which would be completely busted if it wasn't the case, is if you took servant with your leader doesn't keep servant for your opponent's turn, so you don't become a 20k leader on your opponent's turn, or 25 if you're awakened. That would be busted. So the Awaken, pretty standard. When your life is at 4 or less, you untap 1, draw 1. Because of your front side auto, you have very good self-awakening, and you also have very good self-awakening within the archetype, so that you can awaken turn 2 most games if you need to, or turn 3 at the latest very easily. So the backside, auto, when it attacks, you draw a card. Also important to note that both the front side and the backside autos on swing are once per turn, so if you give your leader dual attack, then they don't trigger twice. The activate main on the backside is the same as the front side, Spirit Boost 1, take a 4 cost or less from the drop area, but you can also now choose 4 costs or less on your opponent's battle area. And so obviously that acts as some very nice removal for Spirit Boost. Your Unison in the deck is very easy to protect because of some of the synergies that we have in there. And so it's very easy to just stack up some markers and then remove a guy, and if they have a nice keyword skill you can take, then obviously take it. And then it's got another activate main where you can place 2 cards from under your leader into the drop area to give your leader 5k until the start of your next main phase, so kind of acting as a bean for your opponent's turn, which can be especially nice if combined with the new Z leader, because the new Z leader is obviously 20k base. If you use this effect and then you Z awaken, then you'll go into 25k base for your opponent's turn if you really need to defend some swings. But oftentimes you just don't use that effect because you're looking to be the aggressor. You don't need to worry about defending if you're just going to kill them. So important things to note with this leader is that the drop area manipulation I think is massively underrated. Being able to just snipe cards out of your opponent's drop and have them stuck under your leader for a little while, or your Union Absorb skills, is really strong, especially in matchups like against a Trunks Jeter, where they might be trying to revive their 1-drops from the drop. You can just start soaking up all of the 1-drops under your leader, so that they have to find them in hand, or keep them around on the board, so that they have the evolve targets, that sort of thing. Or against a deck like U7, if they need to keep their Universe 7 count high in the drop, you can start sucking them up as well. There is really a lot of drop area interaction in the game now, like a lot more than you might expect. And so this kind of thing actually really comes up quite a lot. And even just for counting up things for Sparking 5 effects or Overwhelm effects as well, you can just start manipulating with that as well. So overall, like, the leader is just really solid generically on its own. But we'll get into the actual archetype now as well. So to start off with the 1-drops, there are 2 1-drops, and we play a full playset of all 4. Something that is quite nice about the B nerf and about having to cut all of the blue from this deck is the fact that you have a lot more space in the deck. So previously I was only running 3 copies of this 1-drop, but now we're on a full playset. And we've also included more archetype cards so that this top 5 hits. So what these cards actually do, they're pretty similar. Both of them have the same Union Absorb skill, where you choose a card under your leader, you place it under this battle card, and then you go into your 4-drop Majin Buu from your deck, and it can be any green 4-drop Buu with 15k power, and you can play it from your deck or your drop area. So if you run out of targets in your deck, which happens quite often, you can just start playing them out from drop area instead. And the only difference between the 2 1-drops is that this guy on play draws a card, this guy on play searches top 5 for a 5 cost or less green Majin card. So because we've now cut the blue package from the deck, we're playing a full 4 copies of this guy, and we're also playing more targets for it, because previously it wouldn't really hit the top 5. But now it's like very consistent that you do hit it, and there are some situations where you'll prioritize playing this guy over the other card, over the other 1-drop, because there'll be times where you actually want to top 5 and try and find a particular Majin card. And then the only 4-drop that we're currently playing that's a target for the Union Absorb is Majin Buu Mighty Absorption. We're playing full 4 copies. This guy is like the bread and butter of the deck. This guy really just sorts you out for your early turn 1 and 2. So he's got an evolved skill over a Go tank, so you don't need to worry about that. He's got a permanent where if this card would be removed from the battle area by an opponent's skill, you can remove one of your margin tokens instead. A couple of important things to note with that, obviously the first thing being that if it's minus through power, like against any sort of red deck, if they minus this guy 15k, then it's just going to die. There's nothing you can do to save it because it's a game mechanic, obviously. But the main other thing is that if you have this guy out and a margin token, and your opponent like AoE clears your board, say with the blue cell 9-drop for Gamma, you can choose the order of resolutions. So you can choose to have your 4-drop removed first, in a way, before the token, and then you can have your 4-drop permanent kick in to kill the token before the token gets removed to save your 4-drop, and then the token is obviously just removed anyways. So that's something quite important to note, and that actually does come up quite frequently with this. It's just a nice little neat interaction to save you a couple of 4-drops sometimes. And then when this card is played, you can search for your Unison. So it's a 1-drop green Unison with 1k power, and then if you find a target from your deck to your hand, then you discard a card. And then it's got an activate main, limit 1, spirit boost 1, you play a margin token, which are 15k tokens with 5k combo power, I believe. I have some over here, in fact. Yeah, so they're 15k tokens, and then 5k combo power, 0 combo cost. And then you can also optionally take a life with that activate main. So that's going to help you with self-awakening. That's how you can very easily awaken turn 2 sometimes if your opponent attacks you enough. But also turn 3 is like every turn, every game you're going to awaken turn 3 with this card and your leader taking life as well. But yeah, just the main utility of this card is being a sticky guy, generates you the margin token, searches your Unison, and then the margin token is another 15k swing, so you get 2 15k swings for 0 energy because the Union Absorb skills are free. And then obviously the 1-drops are 1 energy to play, so effectively you get 2 15k swings for 1 energy, as well as the draw/top 5 search, as well as searching your Unison, as well as optionally taking a life, as well as protection on the 4-drop. So like that's really what makes this deck so strong, is just this 4-drop being so accessible and so like it just does a lot for you, because it generates so much value and protection in the same card. And then the other 4-drop that we are running, this guy isn't a target for the Union Absorb skills because he's 20k power, but he is just very strong, especially with the new Z leader. Is Majin Buu Ultimate Despair. So previously I wasn't running this card because in the green-blue version it just didn't really work, and it also just didn't really work in the mono-green version. It wasn't like amazingly strong in my opinion, but now with the new Z leader this card is absolutely snapped, and I've considered going to a full 4 copies of this card just because of how good it is with the new Z leader. So again, he's got an evolved skill, you don't need to read it. He's got the same permanent as the other 4-drop where you can kill margin tokens instead of him if he's removed by a skill. He's got an auto where when this card is played from your hand, you play 1 margin token, then you choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and place it underneath this card. So the main important thing about that is it doesn't have an energy cost restriction. So obviously that means you can start taking your opponent's big boss monsters, which is great. But the main reason why that is so important in this deck, and especially in green in general, is that you can hit tokens with that. So if your opponent token negates one of your swings, you can play this guy down and then just eat the token. Obviously the token then just disappears, but it means they then don't have their block alive, so you can keep pushing through, which is especially important in this deck being a more aggressively slanted deck. And then one of the ways that you can play this card, and the way that is written on the card, is the activate main for 2 green energy. If you have 3 or more mono green energy, and you choose 1 of your green battle cards and place a card under it into its owner's drop area, you can play this card from your hand. So basically, if you've done one of your Union Absorbs, you pay 2. If you've got 3 or more mono green energy, pay 2, place a card from underneath the Union Absorb into the drop area, and you play this guy down. And again, this is generating you 2 swings for 2 energy, and also eating one of your opponent's battle cards. So you can really see how quickly these swings start to stack up, because like even though they're 15k, 20k, there's a lot of them for very cheap. And then the unison for the deck, we have 4 Babidi Wicked Mental, and this is the one that is searchable off of the previous 4-drop. As I said before, he's a 1-cost 1k, so in theory he's very easy to kill, and obviously with Black Smoke being a card now, he is actually quite easy to kill. But if your opponent isn't running Black Smoke, or if they just don't see it, it is a tap 2 on 2 energy, so there are times where they might just consider not dropping it on you, because you might be able to punish them by just killing them after that. But in the case where they don't have Black Smoke up, what this guy does is permanent. If you have a battle card with Servant in rest mode, your opponent can't attack this card. So effectively all of your Servant battle cards may act as a deadly defender towards this unison, which is really nice, because otherwise it's super easy to kill. Now you may be wondering, how on earth do you play Servants in this deck, because none of the cards previously covered as Servants. So the unison +2 is an activate main where you can choose up to one of your mono green Majin Buu cards with an original power of 15k or less in rest mode, and the chosen card gains Servant until the end of your opponent's next turn. So basically what that means is when you get this guy out, you swing with him, he's already searched your unison, so you don't need to worry about finding that. You can then have your unison down, you swung with him, he's in rest mode, +2, give him Servant. Whilst he's on the board, your opponent can't attack your unison, and because he's got Servant until the end of your opponent's next turn, he's going to be 25k, so very hard to swing over, and also very hard to remove by skills, because you can pop the margin token, and there are times where I'll just leave the margin token in active mode on turn 2, just to guarantee that this guy survives. And then this guy is sat on a very nice 3 markers, going into 5 markers for your turn 3, and then you can really start just spirit boosting stuff. Although I guess he'd be on 2 markers, because you'd use this guy's spirit boost skill on your turn 2, sorry. So yeah, that's just how this unison gets super sticky, even though it's a 1-drop 1k. If you just play any 1-drop on turn 1 and it sticks about, or any 1-drop on turn 2, then you're able to search your unison, get the guy that protects your unison, and generate a token which protects the guy that protects your unison. So it really does start to stack up in that you just can't kill anything that comes out on this board. And then he has a nice little auto as well once per turn, where when you remove a marker from this card using Spirit Boost, then this guy gains Overlord for the turn. So that's just quite nice for if you're looking to really try and kill them. You can give one of your Buu's Servant and then just Overlord it away to draw a card, and that just gives you an extra card towards combo power. It also means if you're limited on the number of targets you have for your Union Absorbs, if maybe you've got a load stuck in life, you can actually use that to Overlord off your 4-drop target for the Union Absorb to put it back into the deck, so that you can then just replay it as another swing. And something else that's important to note is that the Servant falls off at the end of your opponent's turn, which means that it's not live during your turn, so that the 4-drop Buu will still restand when it comes back to your charge phase. Also, something that I recommend doing is, even if you have copies of this guy in your hand, when you play your 4-drop Mighty Absorption, it's still worth searching the rest of the copies out the deck. Because even though you have to discard a card, you can just discard the other copies of this, and what that does for you is it just thins your deck out so that you can start finding your super combos, your secret rare, your overwhelms. Especially going into turn 3, you really need to just start thinning your deck out, and you'll see in some of the gameplays that I've got, which I'll have in the description down below for anyone who wants to check it out. There are games where on turn 3 I get to like 10 or fewer cards in deck, just because the deck thins itself so much. And because I'm searching out all of my unisons, even if I'm just discarding them. And then, because we're running a unison and we're green, we're running 4 charismatic. Pretty standard stuff, to be honest, it's just 4 charismatic. Now, however, we are also running another counterplay in the deck, that being 2 Dodoria brimming with power. This guy is just quite nice if you have a unison down. He comes in as a counterplay to anything that's 2 cost or less, and stops it from being played, places it in the drop area instead, and also plays this card. The main utility of this card is that on your turn 3 you can stop floodgates. Your unison is pretty sticky, so it's unlikely that they'll actually kill your unison, so this guy is going to be live most of the time, and if they do kill your unison, then they've probably tapped out to do it, so you don't need to worry about floodgates in that case most of the time anyways. So yeah, I think Dodoria is just really nice for that extra push in case your opponent tries to stick a riposte against you or a heroic prospects, that sort of thing. You can just counterplay it and then continue with your turn. And then another reason why I'm running this card specifically over a card like Focus Breakthrough is because it's a 0-5k. So whereas Focus Breakthrough or any of the extra card counterplays are not 0-5ks, and that's actually more relevant in this deck because of a card which I'm about to get into. And that card being the Demonic Scream Majin Buu. So this card is a card originally made for the Set 9 Black Majin Buu deck, but it actually works really well in this deck, especially when trying to pivot towards more of an aggressive playstyle. It's just got a very simple activate main, which is you choose a Majin Buu card in your battle area and place this card under it from your hand. And then if you've got no cards in your hand, you choose up to one Majin Buu card in your battle area and switch it to active mode. So effectively what this means is if you swing, you burn all of your hand, you combo all in on a swing to take them down to 1 life, or you combo all in on a swing and they combo out when they're on 1 life. You can use this card in your hand to restand one of the Majin Buus in your battle area, and then just get an extra swing. Now that means that Dodoria being a 0-5k is more relevant because there are turns where you'll just want to charge all of your like 1-cost cards or negates or anything like that, anything that you can't just combo off, just so that you can guarantee that this card is live. And so Dodoria just being a 0-cost 5k so that you can actually combo it out of your hand when you need to activate this card is actually super relevant. And also the relevancy of this card in this deck specifically because we're not running really any like big threatening Buus. The biggest we've got is a 20k. But the idea behind it is that you can give one of your 4-drop Servant, so you can give this guy Servant, obviously with the idea to protect your Unison, and then you can combo all in on a swing to say they combo out. They're on 1 life, you can then use this guy's effect to restand the Servant battle card, because Servant only says that the card doesn't restand during the charge phase. You can restand the Servant battle card and then get another 25k swing, and then you can overlord it off to get an extra draw, and then you can do whatever you can with that 1 card in hand if they've comboed out of the other swing as well. But this is just like a pseudo free play for the end of the turn if you really need to, like if you really need that extra push. Most of the time you don't need it, but there are times where it will come up, and it's very, very nice when it does come up, because there are times where it's come up for me and it just feels very good to pull off, of course. And then for the rest of our kind of off-color cards, we've got 1 Furthering Destruction Champa. I have considered going up to 2 copies of this card at times, just because I'm running quite a few negates right now and I'm kind of unsure about them. But 1 copy is honestly fine. This deck thins like crazy, and you do use quite a fair bit of your energy on turn 3 anyways, so using this as a 1-cost 10k can be a little bit cloggy sometimes. So I think 1 copy is kind of fine, but you know, you guys can test around with it and change it how to fit your playstyles, of course. And then I am actually running 2 overrounds in the deck, so I'm just running 2 Feigned Greetings. This is again just to make sure that I see it on turn 3 or turn 4. And obviously if they survive turn 3, then I can find another copy for turn 4. But yeah, this is just, I want to have as much free play in this deck as possible, because there are a couple of ways that you can free play quite a few of the cards in the deck. So I just want to add on top of that and just go as aggressive as possible with guaranteeing that I see overrounds on turn 3 as much as I can. And then speaking of free play, our secret rare is going to be Pan. Obviously you can use this as a defensive tool in a pinch, but most of the time this is just a free 40k swing. And then obviously with your overarm, that's a free 30k swing, a free 40k swing, and then this guy can be a free 25k swing effectively. And then we'll go into the Z leader later, but it does get a little bit stupid with how many free plays you get. In terms of the negate lineup, I'm currently running 2 of the Bupo. This card is, well, obviously everyone knows this card, but it's even better in this deck because it's the actual archetype the card was designed for, and so it's obviously searchable off of the previous 1-drops. But it's also got the Union Absorb skill that the 1-drops have, so if you negate your opponent's, one of your opponent's attacks and stop their whole turn, and then this guy sticks about for your turn, you can then just Union Absorb and continue with your plays using this guy as the target rather than having to pay an energy for your 1-drops. But this guy doesn't come up too often. He's just quite nice to have in the case that your opponent floodgates you and you don't have Dodoria, or you can't Dodoria the floodgate if it's a card like Violent Rays or something like that. And then in terms of the other negates, I'm running 1 Shocking Death Ball and 2 Cell's Earth Destroying Kamehameha. So these originally were kind of a meta call, and originally I was on 2 Shocking Death Ball. I was on 2-2 split. Originally these were kind of a meta call towards Red Sin Shenron, because they do work against Red Sin Shenron. Cells being a really nice way to just turn 1, stop the double strike crit, and then take a card out their hand as well. And then Shocking Death Ball, obviously you can negate attacks and then KO their Nuova Shenrons, or if they've got Haze or Oceanus about as well, you can pop them. But now that I think Red Sin is kind of, oh well, it's still in the meta, but it's kind of being overshadowed by blue a little bit more now. I think it's okay to kind of drop these cards down. And I have considered just cutting the Shocking Death Ball as well, because at least with Cells you can in theory use it offensively, and then keep your Black Majin Buu alive as well, the one that requires you to have no hand, the Demonic Scream. So in theory you can use this card aggressively, whereas obviously Shocking Death Ball you can't, so that's kind of the merit to it. But Shocking Death Ball is still a great card. You can kind of mess around with whether you want 2 copies or 0 copies. I'm kind of torn at the moment, which is why I've got the 1 copy in. But there's a card I'd probably put in an extra copy of, which I'll get into in a minute anyways. And then for the rest of the negates, I'm on 2 Dormant. Another thing I do like about Shocking Death Ball is it kind of holds a pincer or fork with Dormant, where if they swing with a 2-drop first, then you can Dormant and KO the 2-drop, limit them to 1 more attack for the turn. And if they don't swing with a 2-drop first, you can Shocking Death Ball, negate the attack and then pop their 2-drop. So that's really nice. But this deck doesn't really need that many negates. You run 2 Dormant, you already have the 2 Bupo in the case that you need a Floodgate, and you have Pan. So like, you never need more than 2 Dormant realistically. Dormant is kind of only really there for your turn 2. If they have like a really explosive turn 2 or turn 3, then you can just Dormant to try and shut that down, and then take the turn back to yours and just continue hitting them. And then I am also running 2 Homicidal Clones. I think that honestly you could probably cut the Shocking Death Ball for a 3rd copy of this now, just because this card is, like, all of the token negates are built to be aggressive negates, whereas all of the Sparking 5 negates are built to be defensive negates. And by that I mean, like, the token negates are made for aggressive decks because they're reliant on your life total rather than your drop area total. Like in an aggressive deck, I'm probably not going to fill up my drop area all that quickly necessarily. Like in this deck especially, you don't really fill up your drop area until you Z-Awaken. And so the Sparking 5 is not going to be live until later on in the game, once both players have started using some of their resources. Whereas the Homicidal Clones, I can take myself down to 5 life super quickly, and then it just means that I'm guaranteed to get down to 3 life, which is where I need to be to Z-Awaken. So you could definitely just go to 3 of this instead of the Shocking Death Ball, but you know, it's kind of personal preference. I've been finding the current ratios work absolutely fine, but you definitely, I don't think you need as many negates as I'm running right now. And then super combo of choice is going to be obviously Defending Father Paragus. It's just, yeah, it's just great. You can use it super aggressively to cycle, find any sort of pieces that you might need, super helpful for finding the last free plays you might need for the turn. And then especially in this deck as well, it's super helpful because you can start warping out any negates that you might have, so that your Demonic Screen Majin Buu is always alive as well. So that's some extra utility for the card in this deck as well. And then sort of last generic green cards that I'm running, I'm on 2 of the Kaioken Son Goku. This card has kind of been overperforming for me, so I do feel like bumping it up to 3 might be worth doing, and this is probably the card I'd consider bumping up most for the Shocking Death Ball space. The main issue being that I don't own a 3rd copy right now, so I'm only on 2, but this card you can definitely bump it up to 3. It's a really, really strong turn 3 play, and it's also really strong if you back it up with an aggressive super combo, and in this deck you drop a lot of aggressive super combos, so it's very, very common that you'll just drop this guy turn 3 first thing, and then swing with it and aggressively drop a Paragus behind it as well. And then I'm also on 2 Zamasu. This is kind of to pair with the Kaioken, but also if you have any Freezer Charismatic that stick about, you can drop this over that as well. On turn 3, you kind of just want as many 1 energy plays as possible, because most of the actual Majin Buu engine is 0 cost, or 1 cost, but you will have invested into it on your turns 1 and 2 to bring them out. And so you just want generic good green stuff that costs 1 energy if possible, because you've already got your Overarm Secret Rare and then a load of other free plays as well. And then the last card that we're running, which is a really nice finisher for the deck honestly, is the 2 copies of Spirit Bomb Goku. Just because, like I've mentioned already, your Unison is so sticky, it's super easy to keep your Unison high markers. And then there are even turns where like I'll Spirit Boost it down to 2 markers with my leader effects and my 4-drop effects. But then keeping it on 2 markers just to drop this guy as a nice double strike finisher. Just really, really solid finisher. And it's kind of another reason why I don't think you necessarily need a second Champa in the deck, just because this guy is kind of your 2nd and 3rd copies of Champa. So, yeah. That's the main deck. We'll go into the Z deck real quick. But to be honest, in the Z deck, there isn't much that I actually go into. I'll cover what I do go into. I mean, the main thing that I go into every single game is going to be the Z leader. The rest of the Z deck is a lot more irrelevant, but the Z leader is like absolutely phenomenal. So what this guy does, he is a Z Awaken for 1 green energy if your life is at 3 or less over the Green Majin Buu leader. He's got 2 activate mains, so the first one being you place a card from your hand underneath your leader to draw 2 cards. Then you choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards in their battle area or drop area, place it under this card, and then it gains a keyword skill from that. So not only is that amazing because it offers you removal for cards that cost higher than 4, which your previous leader obviously didn't, but you don't need Spirit Boost for the skill, and it offers you extra draw power. So on the turn where you Z Awaken, you can get anywhere from 3 to 4 draws, because you can be on the backside already and then swing draw a card and then Z Awaken and then place a card under to draw 2 and then use the activate main to obviously draw 2. But a lot of the time what I do is most of the time I'm staying unawakened until turn 3. I'll stick around 4 or 5 life, and then I'll swing with my leader to go down to 4 life, flip a life to draw 2, use my 4-drop effect to spawn a token, take myself down to 3 life, and then I can awaken, untap 1, draw 1, obviously investing in energy if I haven't already to make use of the untap, and then pay 1 to Z Awaken, and then that's another draw 2 on the activate main there. But also what that allows you to do is before you Z Awaken, it allows you to Spirit Boost on the front side if you've got spare markers, and then Spirit Boost on the back side, and that allows you to get a ton of cards under your leader for your Z Awaken, which is super relevant for the 2nd activate main, which is activate main once per turn, place 3 non-leader cards from under this card in their owner's drop area, play up to 1 Green Majin Buu with an energy cost of 4 from your hand. So this is the free play that I've been kind of hinting towards throughout the deck profile, and the main target for that, which is why this card is now so strong in the deck, is the Majin Buu Ultimate Despair. You can in theory play the other Majin Buu, but it's just not as worth it, because like I said before, this guy is going to if he's free played, he still gets all of his effects, so he can be played for free. He can spawn a 15k token, which does serve as protection, but in theory, it's just a free 20k swing and a free 15k swing, and then it eats an opponent's battle card, so if they've token negated or if they've just got a threat on the board, you can just eat it, and all of that is for free. So in theory, if you're counting the token and the battle card as 2 separate free plays, because in essence they kind of are, they're 2 battle cards that are being played for free. That's 2 battle cards you can play for free, plus Overrealm, plus Secret Rare, plus Demonic Scream. So in theory you can get 5 swings in this deck for completely 0 energy, which is why I think that this deck is like 100% pivoted towards an aggro deck now, rather than a value sort of control oriented deck that I've seen people mess around with it. And then also just the leader being 20k, just in case you don't kill them on turn 3 or 4, you do have that extra line of defense. And like I mentioned before, you can make it 25k if you use the Awakened side leader activate main as well. So for the rest of the Z deck, it's not super relevant. we're running 2 copies of this guy. He's effectively a 1-drop 15k that can't be removed by skills for a turn. That's about it. If you don't have enough ways to spend your energy on turn 3 in your hand, you can just drop this guy as a couple of extra swingers if you need him, and then that's about it. I don't think I've ever played this card, but in theory it can come up. It's better to have than to not have, and that's kind of what the Z deck's for as well. We are running 3 copies of Frieza Resurrected Ambition. I think this is the only battle card that I've actually played from the Z deck that, other than the Z Leader obviously being the other Z card. This card is obviously nice for some removal, but it's mainly there for the hand destruction aspect and also a nice double strike swing. So if your opponent kind of runs out of energy, runs out of negates, you can just sneak this guy as a double strike swing if you don't see your Champ or your Spirit Bomb. But yeah, mainly there just for the discard if you don't really have anything else to sink your energy into. And then last card in the Z deck is the new Jiren, the Immovable. Jesus Christ. This guy is just there for if you need to kill a Unison. As I said before, it's never come up for me so far, but better to have than to not have. This deck doesn't really build up all that much Z energy. There aren't any ways to sort of like free combo from drop or anything like that. So the main way that you are generating Z energy is by comboing, just like over comboing into swings, which is kind of fine because the deck is a bit more of an aggressive deck. So there are times where you do want to push them down to certain life totals. If they're on 4 life, for example, you want to push them down to 3 so that they're not just in a comfortable awakening range. So over comboing in those sorts of situations is really important, and that is kind of where some of the skill of the deck can show itself, is knowing where to over combo to generate that Z energy. And then also you obviously have your aggressive Power Goose super combos, which will generate Z energy for you, but will also be a very easy and consistent way to generate Z energy. So that's kind of it for the deck profile. I will go through a couple of cards that you may expect to see in this sort of deck that I'm just personally not running, but you could maybe consider running. There's kind of 2 packages that I've sorted out, and the main and very obvious one being the Fated Rivals package. I've just found that you don't really need barrier removal all that much, so this is the kind of thing that I would side deck, maybe just 3 of this and 2 of this, or honestly you could just get away with siding 2 copies of this and none of the rest of it. Because the Piccolo is very reliant on you having the Goku out, and that's your entire turn 3 in terms of energy. And also if you go first, then you're not getting Goku out till turn 4, which is kind of going against what the deck wants to do. And so like Piccolo can just end up as a dead card because you're not getting Goku out, and then you're not getting Piccolo out, and then you've just got 5 slots in your deck wasted. So you could very easily just side 2 copies of this, and I think that's probably the best thing to do. You also now with the new set already have Unison removal in the form of the Jiren Z battle card, so you don't need the Unison removal of the Piccolo. So this is kind of just like a win more card in my eyes now, in decks that aren't Turtle School basically. Or in decks that can't really afford to play it. But the Goku is very strong if you are against a particular matchup where you need barrier removal, basically any yellow deck, then you want to be siding these in for sure. But I just don't think it's worth maining. And also, you don't really run that many Saiyans. I think the main ones that you run are the Paragus super combos and the Spirit Bomb Gokus. The Spirit Bombs you don't really want to combo off unless you see multiples. So it's a little bit harder to actually proc the activate main of this guy. But basically just side this in it if you need barrier removal. I don't think you need to main it though. And then the other package, which I've talked about a bunch, is the Tricky Nemesis package with the 6-drop Black Buu and the 5-drop Green Buu. Yeah, I just feel like this deck, it just felt really clunky when I was trying it out. So the main utility of this package, for those that don't know, is that this guy is treated as mono green in your deck and drop area. Let me just double check that those zones are right. Yeah, in your deck and drop area, he's treated as green or mono green. I don't remember which one the errata got changed to. But basically he becomes a target for your Union Absorb skills because it's a 4-drop 15k and he becomes mono green. And then he's got an activate main for 3 energy. If you've got 4 or more energy, you can play one of these 2 guys from your hand, which is obviously very nice. These 2 are very, very strong cards. But the issue that I found with it was that I found that I was wanting to free play this most of the time from my hand using the Z Leader, but because it's not treated as green in your hand, it's treated as green in your deck and drop. You can't do that, and so you have to go down the line of one drop into this guy, into one of these guys, which means that you have to have one of these in your deck and then one of these in your hand and one of the one drops in your hand, which gets really, really hard to set up. And then also you have to do that on turn 4 or later, and then you're not really doing much leading up to that, and it also just feels quite clunky and a lot harder to survive till turn 4 in my opinion. And then if you're doing it on turn 4, you're tapping out for it because you have to pay 1 for the 1 drop and then pay 3 for this guy's activate main to play one of these guys. And then you're relying on dormant and or homicidal clones to survive. And if you've already Z awakened, which in theory you want to be Z awakened before then so that you can survive a bit easier, but then you're already on 3 life, so then it just kind of starts conflicting quite a lot. And then also all of that is susceptible to counterplays as well. If they counterplay the 1 drop on turn 4, you don't have the energy for the rest of this. And then if they counterplay you on the 4 drop, then you just can't do it, and you have to sort of start again next turn as well. So that is sort of some of the reasons I didn't choose to run this package. I think that you can sort of side deck it, and you can play this deck in a way that focuses around this package, but it's just not for me personally. I think that the side deck is more of the place for this, where if you think that the turn 3 sort of turn 4 kills aren't going to work against a deck that has a lot of floodgates, a lot of negates, basically any sort of blue deck right now, especially with their activate battle tricks as well with Goku Black, is probably where you sort of side this stuff in and you go for more of a value route. You try and kill them like turn 5 once you've got one of these guys set up, and then you can go wide with the rest of the deck. But in general, I just don't see this package being worth main decking, honestly. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts behind the Green Majin Buu deck now with the new Z leader, and my personal choices for the deck actual breakdown with it. I hope you guys enjoyed, obviously. If you guys did enjoy and you want to see this deck in action, then you can check out the local stream that I played it in, which I'll have a link to in the description. There'll be a video of that as well. Other than that, thank you guys very much for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you guys in the next one.